afternoon and a warm welcome to our honored guests and virtual audience for joining us here for BS first public webinar, The New Frontier. We apologize for the technical difficulties, but they have been sorted, so we should be good for now. While 2020 might have been an unexpected year, particularly with the global health pandemic, it has also been a year of learning, reflection, and solidarity. As have seen from history, crises have been a turning point for societies. Over the past few months, we have seen a dramatic adaptation of digitalization across industries and governments, extraordinary acts of kindness and solidarity, and we have witnessed the dedication and significance of our frontline essential workers. In spite of the crisis, the UAE has continued to push the development of space, science, and technology. The July launch of the Hope probe was a moment of pride for the UAE, the Arab world, and a message of hope to the Arab youth. Over the course of this event, we will cover two knowledge sessions. The first is about the UAE's hope for space, and the second is a panel discussion about how offices and workplaces will leverage design and technology to suit the post-COVID-19 environment. I'd like to welcome BS Group CEO, Mr. Khalid Al-Hraimel, to give his opening remarks on the role of technologies in our lives, spaces, and future.
Thank you, Hind. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the New Frontier, BS first public virtual webinar. And I would like to thank our distinguished guests and all the viewers for joining us today. This year has been a year of momentous change and disruption. Nevertheless, the UAE has stood resilient against the COVID-19 pandemic under the guidance of our wise leadership, support from public and private entities, the wider community, and our frontline essential workers. During this disruptive period, the UAE has remained committed to its goal for our nation to be a leader in science, technology, and space exploration. On the 19th of July, the Emirates Mars Mission launched the Hope probe. Even as I speak, the Hope probe is somewhere out in space, traveling at a speed of up to 120,000 kilometers per hour. Its arrival to Mars will coincide with the 50th anniversary of the UAE's founding, which is a perfect symbol of a nation looking back with pride at its story and forward to its future with hope and confidence. This was a historic day for the UAE. This achievement was only possible after 6 years of hard work and planning from a team of scientists and engineers at the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. What we can learn from this is this cooperation and co-creation will drive innovation. And that is exactly what is required as we look for solutions to tackle the long-term challenges of climate change and build a more sustainable future for everyone. At BIA, we have a twin pillar strategy of sustainability and digitalization for a future-ready economy. Our new headquarters is a physical manifestation of these two pillars, a net zero energy building, which will be a LEED Platinum certified building, as well as the Office of the Future, and one of the smartest buildings in the world, which will be the first fully integrated AI building in the region. This virtual event converges bright minds from space, technology, and architecture, and we hope to leave learning something new and inspired about what the future holds. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope you enjoy this virtual event.
Thank you, Mr. Khalid Al-Hraimel, for your insightful words. I am now very excited to introduce our first guest, Fatma Louta, Instrument Science Engineer at Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, who will share more insights on the Emirates Mars mission. Fatma, thank you so much for joining us today. The Hope probe launch must have been such an exciting endeavor to be part of. Could you please share more about your role in the mission?
First off, I want to thank everyone and B especially for having me. I'm very excited to be here and to talk about the Emirates Mars mission. So talking about what I worked on in the Emirates Mars mission. So as Hind introduced me, I'm an instrument science engineer. I am part of the science team in the Emirates Mars mission, which is the science aspect of the team is led by Her Excellency Sara Al-Amiri. So we work on specifically, there's 3 instruments on board the Emirates Mars mission. All these instruments are of scientific basis, and I work on one of these instruments, which is the Emirates Mars Ultraviolet Spectrometer. So it's an ultraviolet spectrometer which studies the upper atmosphere of Mars. It focuses on studying the constituents that make up water, such as hydrogen and oxygen, and helps us understand how it escaped from the atmosphere. So I specifically work on the science aspect of this instrument.
It actually sounds very interesting and very complex. So it must be very exciting for you to be actually working on such a thing. So the UAE has successfully joined the elite race to the Red Planet along with the US and China. Could you tell us more about this mission and why it's important to the UAE?
So this mission was announced around 6 years ago. And being someone who was already working in space, I was very surprised. I was like, oh, are we really going to Mars? It was a very ambitious goal. If you do your research, you realize there is not a lot of countries that do go to outer planetary missions to a planet like Mars. So for me, I feel this mission was created first off to be the beginning of kind of the diversification of the UAE economy from an oil-based economy to a science and technology-based economy. And we always say this: space is the mother of all technology and the mother of all science. And a lot of technologies we have today actually spin off from space endeavors. Things like the MRI machine, hydroponics, these technologies started for space industry. So I think it's it was a first step to introduce that this is kind of our new era. We're going to be investing in science and technology. I think not only that, it's an inspiration for all the students that we have in high schools, the students we have in universities, to consider such fields, to consider going into this kind of very innovative and creative industry. So it is definitely, I would say, the driver for the United Arab Emirates to start its golden era of science and technology.
You're absolutely right. And I think what you said also about, it's shedding the light on, such interesting majors for the students, to, expand and look at other fields that they would want to, study rather than just focusing on, I would say, maybe the more common majors that everyone is going for these days. So definitely something that's very interesting.
To add on that, actually, just interesting facts is that when we announced the Emirates Mars mission, we had a lot of outreach programs for students. And we realized that the first year we announced the mission, we didn't have a lot of applicants with science backgrounds. And as the years passed, the amount of students that had scientific backgrounds, such as mathematics and physics, increased exponentially in ways you cannot imagine. And that's just within 6 years we've had flickered the interest of students. And there is also a lot of university programs that opened up because of the Emirates Mars mission. There's a space science center that opened up in the UAU, the Al Ain University, the UAE University actually. Some majors opened up in AUS and University of Sharjah, and all of that was as an indirect result of the Emirates Mars mission.
Yeah, and I think it was very obvious, even and evident for me personally while watching the launch, and I was reading everyone's title, and you can see like there is a lot of diversity, within the science major itself. So again, that's something that's very commendable that the UAE is doing. If we're talking about the timeline of the Hope Probe's 200-day journey to Mars, can you tell us, the timeline and what is expected? And then did COVID-19 affect the planning of this mission?
So to start off, our mission is actually broken down into a few phases. So around all these phases are approximations. So the first around 45 days, we have something called early operations. And that's when we start checking out and testing everything that's on board the spacecraft to make sure that the impact of the launch did not affect it. So it's a very busy 45 days. We're checking out all our instruments, all the subsystems we have, making sure that everything is working the way it should. We're actually wrapping up this phase in the coming few weeks, and everything has been going well. Afterwards, we start a cruise phase, which is around 5 months, where the spacecraft is just cruising its way to Mars. After that, we get into a phase which is the Mars orbit insertion phase. This is a very exciting but kind of risky phase when the spacecraft goes into the first orbit around Mars. And hopefully we have a successful Mars orbit insertion, and it's going to be arriving to Mars around beginning of February. So after that, we're going to be in this orbit, which we call our capture orbit. So it's where the planet captured us first, the first orbit. We stay there for a while, and then we actually use our propulsion system and move to our science orbit, which the science orbit has kind of the dimensions we need to fulfill our scientific goals. When we finally reach our scientific orbit, we would be able to start getting the data that we are interested in. We will be in the scientific orbit for around 2 Earth years, which is equal 1 Martian year. And that will help us to understand how the atmosphere of Mars changes in a full year, which actually hasn't been done before in the sense of getting this data so accumulatively from day to night, 4 seasons, and geographically. This is what makes the mission very special. So after the 2 years, Earth years, we're there, and if everything goes well, we will be able to make the decision to extend the mission to try to set other scientific goals as well. So this is, in summary, the journey of the Hope probe.
That sounds very exciting. We were all very excited just watching the launch. So I'm sure all of us are here would love to follow the journey and see, like the end result. So speaking as an Emirati, it was a very proud moment for me to actually see the successful launch of the Hope probe on TV and covered by international media as well. But looking further afield, what does the Hope probe represent to the Arab world?
So when the mission was announced, it took a few weeks until they actually announced the name. So I remember the day very well. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid had us on stage. He had the entire team. And then he announced that the name is Hope. And he was very clear that he wanted this mission to be a symbol of hope, not only to the United Arab Emirates, but also to the entire Arab region. That the Arabs can go to space, they can be in the elite space race, they are able to contribute to the scientific industry the way they did in the Golden Age. So as you know, based on our past as Arabs, we played a big role in astronomy, in algebra, in a lot of scientific fields. So this is a hope to go back to that time. If you think about it, I was actually thinking about this, is when you read about countries going to space, you would go in and you would see the Japanese have gone, or the Americans, or the Europeans. So finally we can say the Arabs have gone. So to us, we don't focus on it being an Emirati mission as much as saying that it's an Arab mission. And I think you saw the hashtag His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid had the day of the launch. It was Arabs to Mars. So he's really focusing on that. And to be honest, we're all very proud to be part of a mission that's contributing to this region.
Yeah, of course. And I also noticed another thing while watching the Instagram live during the launch of the Hope probe on the day itself, that I saw a lot of comments coming from people from all around the world, not just Arab world. Like a lot of people from Kuwait were commenting, from Oman, from Saudi, and from, abroad countries. And it was so amazing and such a proud moment to hear everyone's comments and for them to be saying, the UAE did this and the Arab world did that. So as you said, it's not just, a success and then achievement for the UAE itself, but for the Arab world in general.
I want to specify that this is just not also just for the Arab world. So the data and the science we're getting from the Emirates Mars mission is going to change what we know of Mars. It's adding science, it's benefiting humankind in their conquest to understand space and other planets. So the Emirates Mars mission is very unique. The goals are unique. And this was actually a requirement from the leadership. They wanted something to add value So the Emirates Mars mission is actually the first mission ever to provide for us the entire weather, climate, and atmosphere of Mars. And that's going to be a breakthrough in understanding how Mars how Mars changed and the past of Mars, and also other fields of science concerning Mars. So we're very excited to be able to add kind of new knowledge to humankind.
That's very impressive, and we look forward to continuing to see the journey of the Hope probe. Thank you so much, Fatma, for this informative session on the Emirates Mars mission and Hope probe's journey. It was very insightful and informative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hind.
I will now introduce Nadeem Sheikhli, Vice President of Technology and Solutions at BS Digital Venture Evotech, who will be the moderator of the Office of the Future panel discussion. Nadeem, on to you.
Thank you so much, Hind. I'm very glad to be with you here, and this is an honor for me to actually be part of this event. At Evotech, we believe in creating digital empowered and smarter societies. The formulation, the way we actually go about doing this is working with close partnerships with government entities and enterprises in formulating their digital transformation journeys. As such, this panel is very relevant because as we're trying to make sense of what to do next, now that we're trying to go beyond COVID, we need to understand how we actually empower ourselves in this new environment. Long after cities come out of this lockdown and people resume their normal lives, how will workspaces evolve from both architectural and technological points of views? This is the question that we're going to try to answer. With me today, we have some of the key partners that BIA has who are developing our new headquarters. The new headquarters will be a sustainable net zero energy building, and it'll also be among the world's smartest AI-powered offices of the future. First, I'd like to introduce Shajay Bhushan. He's a senior associate at Zaha Hadid Architects. Shajay first joined Zaha Hadid Architects in 2007, and he specializes in the conception and production of architecture from theoretical discourses all the way to manufacturing technologies. Also with us today, we have Ahmed Abu Uthman, the General Manager of Building Technologies and Digital Solutions, MENA at Johnson's Controls. Ahmed is concerned with sustainability and innovation. He's a member of the World Green Energy Organization academic platform and the Emirates Green Building Council. And from Microsoft, we have Haider Saloom. He's the Director of Corporate at Microsoft UAE. Haider has a very strong background in technology, deep knowledge of helping business through their digital journeys. Welcome, everyone. So Shajay, if we can start with you, could you please share with us how architecture in general has evolved post-COVID-19? How have spaces that were previously designed to create social connections now are being forced to sort of have physical distances, you know, the 2 meter that we continuously keep hearing about? How do the two essentially merge into coming with some sort of solution?
Yeah, thanks Nadeem for the introduction, and also thanks to BF for the opportunity to speak and also listen to various speakers here from diverse backgrounds. Yeah, and so, you know, in answer to the question, now we believe at Zaha Hadid Architects that, like, you know, this physical distance, I mean, it shouldn't be called social distancing. It's actually a physical distance, so, and we still need cities, and we still need buildings for all the reasons that we needed them before. It is for the social interaction, for the chance meetings, the visual connection with other visual and audio connections with other colleagues, peers, and so on. So of course, there are new technologies that allow for the physical distance and physical separation to happen and to be virus-free, or at least reduce the risk of infection and so on, like things like contactless entries and, you know, constant monitoring of the HVAC system and so on and so on. But we also believe as the physical dimension is increasingly digitally transformed and technologically infused, we think the social side is beginning to receive equal attention, particularly in terms of how we can study the sociology of office spaces, like how people interact and how innovation actually happens through chance interactions and so on. So at Zadid Architects, we have two specific groups looking at the social side of office spaces, research groups, and also one group, a sub part of my team that is looking at the social aspects of residential buildings. So we believe that's how the COVID has impacted the digitalization, and in particular is bringing out the social side just as much as it's bringing out the physical necessity to be protected from the virus.
So a whole new science is being used, I think, to actually make sure that this is addressed properly. So Shajay, another thing that I had read, that you're also a co-founder of CODE, the
Yep.
Zaha Hadid Architects Computational Design Research Group. Can you share with us, or can you talk a little bit about how, what is it that you guys use this for, and how do you apply it to solving problems, and how is this technology, the one that you just described in terms of looking at new aspects, how is that technology being used?
Yeah, code focuses on two specific aspects of architecture. One is the physical side, as I tried to allude to before, and the physical sides includes like industrialized construction, like digital engineering and digital design, and so on, to be carbon effective or ecologically sustainable, and so on. And then there's the social side, and in particular, we are focusing on participatory technologies, meaning previously they were, architecture and the build space was a domain of experts, which still it is. You need a lot of experts, but the output of architects and engineers and contractors and so on affects non-experts, so we are trying to incorporate technologies that allow fluid interaction between all stakeholders, not only the expert stakeholders, but the end users of office spaces, end users of residential buildings, end users of public buildings. So we are borrowing technologies from space, automotive, aviation, computer graphics, computer science, and also from computational sociology, computational psychology, and so on. So it's a kind of fluid mix of technologies and disciplines that is we see as the immediate future, enabling participation across all stakeholders of the built environment. So that's what excites us. Yeah.
Are you developing models specifically for this that you can use in the future, or is this simply sort of one-off? You essentially you have a problem that you're trying to fix and address, and let's move on.
No, we are developing these things as a platform where we have two main pillars. One is physical sustainability through digitalization and so on, and industrialized construction. And the second pillar is on the social technologies. And so we are trialing this in a small pilot project for a residential project, and we are also in conversation to scale this up, particularly in the UAE and other economies that are investing heavily into leapfrogging into the 21st century.
Great, thank you so much, Shajay. Next, we have Johnson Controls Ahmed and also Microsoft's Haider, who will share with us how technology enables smart and sustainable buildings and cities of the future. What are both companies doing in this space? Ahmed, if we can start with you and then move on to Haider.
Well, first of all, thanks for having us on this webinar. Really excited to be here. We're doing a number of great things and a number of innovations in the building space. To kind of set the stage in terms of where we are today, kind of give and break down the urbanization and the buildings space in terms of the three phases that we see. The first phase was initially, more than 100 years ago, when buildings have started to see different types of technology, which for us, our founder invented the first thermostat, being able to control the comfort of a specific zone within a building. The second phase that we saw in buildings was different types of technologies were coming in, and that led into an integration within the building itself. And now the third phase that we're seeing enter in is that not only is there a need to integrate within the systems of the building, but then to actually be adapting with the various occupants and to be a flexible asset that will serve the occupants in different phases. And that's an element where it's extremely important, not only on improving the occupant experience, but also improving the sustainability and the energy efficiency goals.
Wonderful. So within the building itself makes an enormous amount of sense. But from a city point of view, are you then connecting the various cities together to have a holistic view of how a city operates? And you create models to essentially use appropriately with future cities or newer cities?
Yes. So when we have a smart building, what we generally then build a model to see how that community will behave. And there's a number of things. So just to kind of give you a specific example, now we see more electrification of vehicles. So when there is an urban development that's going to be coming in place, some of the things that would be looked at is ensuring that you have the right infrastructure to provide energy charging stations. Alongside with that, there could be other goals and ambitions in terms of being either net zero or having energy that's actually being developed on-site, on-premise, being stored, and it could then be given back to that community. And that's how we're able to kind of connect the entire ecosystem from starting within a building, community, and then connecting it to the city overall.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ahmed. Haider, same question. How is technology being used to enable smart buildings and smart cities?
Good afternoon, Nadeem. Thank you for you and Bia for inviting us today. I think the background is also, I mean, let's step back a little bit and see why is this important. First, we have a climate challenge, right? There's a global warming, there is a change in climate. It's important to see how we can use technologies to help address some of these challenges that are coming up in there. Also, the global pandemic, it's changed everybody, how they work, how they engage, how they interact, and it's putting a lot of pressure on governments, organizations to reimagine, industries and reimagine workplaces, reimagine education, right? And add to that, if you look at it in the context of smart buildings and sustainable cities, it's very important to leverage all this new technology, the AI infused type of management. How can I use mixed reality to help me, address some remote maintenance challenges? How can I use some smart infrastructure that is IoT based to make that interaction in a much better way and address some of the challenges and create this great level of experience for the people in their interaction with the buildings. So if you think about it, Microsoft in general, we're investing heavily in these technologies. And along with the different partners we have and different customers who are our partners like BIA and Johnson Controls, and we work on seeing, okay, how can we invest in the technology? How can we mainstream that technology to make it available and make the use of it to address some of these problems that we have.
Wonderful. So let's look a bit closer at BIA's new headquarters, and maybe if we can elaborate for all sort of the panelists, on the partnership that actually has developed and is being created to make sure that we create UAE's smartest and greenest building. And you know, we keep hearing about AI, IoT, and so on and so forth. In the context of what's being done for BIA's new headquarters, can you, Haider, talk a little bit about this, and then we'll go to the other panels?
Sure. So, look, I mean, the partnership with BIA and Johnson Control to deliver on the BIA building is really a benchmark. It's setting a benchmark in the region. I mean, let's be realistic. It's one of a kind. It is one of the few. I mean, a lot of these technologies are used in other buildings, but it's the first one that I think of that has been from grounds up, from design, thought of every single aspect and incorporated that in the design, and now they're executing on it. So this makes it that leading edge. So not only a great design, great technology, great integration of all of these things, how it work together, and how this will address the experience of the users that are in there. So this is a super important one. And this is to see how we can use this to create more optimized green energy and more efficiency, more sustainable buildings, you know, smarter devices, and all of this to address, you know, what the BIA wanted to do when they aspired to build this great building.
So Haider, is it fair to say that we can expect newer technologies that haven't been deployed elsewhere to be deployed on BIA's new headquarters building?
Absolutely. There are some cutting edge stuff, definitely. But the interesting thing is how the customer, which is BIA in this case, said, I want the best, I want the greatest, I want everything to work together, spared no money in designing that experience from grounds up. I think this is what was super interesting. Things like leveraging digital twins to simulate, where the virtual environment can simulate the physical environment, and you have a lot of data. You can use this data to make decisions. Things like, you know, whether it is, you know, big data sets that help in analyzing consumption and act upon it. We have various customers that, you know, were able to cut their electricity bill by 20%, 30% with these efficiency technologies. We're really looking forward to see how will BIA leverage that and how much the saving will it be. So we think there will be some great stuff over there. It will be a showcase, definitely in the region and definitely at a worldwide scale as well.
Wonderful. Ahmed, onwards to you. I know you were shaking your head as Haider was talking, so there's a lot of synergy. That's why you guys are working together. But give us a bit of sort of an overview, and maybe you want to talk about Brick. You know, what is going to be innovative from Johnson Controls as far as the BIA headquarters, new headquarters building? What should we expect? What's being done that is not being done elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, there's a lot of actually things that we're doing on the BIA HQ building. I want to emphasize 2 points before going into the specifics, which is driven by the ambitions actually of the project originally on addressing the 3 main challenges, which is energy, water, and security. And now, obviously, with the pandemic, security could be defined in multiple ways. Traditionally, it could be, you know, physical security, but now it could be health concerns and whatnot. The other element that I want to touch on is the fact that, you know, we've worked on an approach that actually not only makes this a critical part of the building, but it will actually be a necessity moving forward. And there is an actual business payback for all of these technologies. So I would actually argue that none of these are actual luxuries. Now, when we actually take a look at the BIA HQ, there are, I'm going to touch base on 3 main things. The first one is obviously the occupant and user experience. The fact that it will be frictionless, it will be using various types of technologies, whether it's voice, the fact that the guest or occupant will be able to book a meeting room, will be able to control set points in terms of ambience, in terms of different types of spaces. And what that also will do will actually connect all of the physical OT technologies within the space to actually have the building adapt in a continuous fashion to operate at that ultra efficiency level, at the same time give the best user and occupant experience, which we have not seen anywhere in the world. As I mentioned earlier, there are buildings that have a number of integrations, but not many buildings that can actually build from the history and the occupant usage and understand how that could be. To give you another specific example, right now, obviously indoor air quality is a critical element. Now, if you're pushing in more fresh air when it's at a very high ambient temperature outside, that will actually reduce the energy efficiency of the building. Understanding the specific occupants and where they are in the building and ensuring that in this specific room we have this many users, we have this many occupants, and ensuring that at that set amount of time when they're there, they have the right ambience in terms of lighting, the right indoor air quality, will actually make for a more pleasant environment. And that's just on a very specific use case example. But there are a number of things that are actually extremely unique. The first related to what Haider touched base on the digital twin. And this technology actually allows us to do a number of things. So not only do we simulate virtually how the building is with its assets, but we can actually assess different preventative measures so that the building is always running at an optimal performance, and that there isn't any interruptions to the occupants whatsoever. Another element beyond the preventative maintenance, but actually looking at the entire enterprise and connecting all of the different buildings, then you can actually have the flexibility to not only monitor from abroad, but there are certain areas where it could be actually rectified without having a person on site.
Right. Thank you so much. Shajay, if we can go back to you a little bit. So during the design of the building, and I know Zaha Hadid and you guys as architects, is technology, in the forefront of your mind in terms of, I need to put cameras, and as such, do I hide them? How do I place them? Where do I put, the speakers and so on and so forth? How much of your thought process is really being put with all these elements in mind, to make sure that the building is technology aware or is able to actually feature technology? How much of an effort, how much of your initial thoughts are along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, from the time of the conception of or inception of Zadid Architects, it's a technology-led digital-first kind of company in its ethos, in the sense that it was founded pre-technology era in the 1970s, but even so, it already conceived of a new architecture that would be possible once technology of construction and technology of monitoring and so on became available. And so we are highly motivated to incorporate technology from the conception of the building itself, all the way to the actual physical production and operation. So what I mean by that is that we borrow the closest analogy could be movie making, particularly computer graphics movies. If the amount of technology that goes into it is probably worth several PhDs, but when you watch a movie, you're not considering how much technology went into it. It's kind of all seamlessly in the background. So we believe in a similar use of technology. If we start thinking about technology from the first sketches, then by the time it is fully physicalized and operational, we can entirely focus on user experiences, user interfaces, and essentially building in the service of the user. And so to be able to do that, like we have to think about technology from the very first stage, and also think about collaborative technologies and collaboratively work with everybody who's participating in the construction and operation of the building, including the users. Yeah.
So beyond the fact that the building absolutely looks like a spaceship, it's so futuristic, it's wonderful to look at, honestly. What one main feature that excites you, as being part of the architects that brought this forth? Again, it's a new headquarter building. It's going to be exciting. It looks wonderful from the outside. What excites you the most?
I think it bears noting and also mentioning again and again, like clients like Bea are like extremely critical in making progress in the built environment. Just not just taking the risk, but like also having the motivation and enabling the funds, and like also the collaborations between all the partners, and having the foresight to do that. So it's not like iconic by chance. It is iconic because it serves the purpose of kickstarting an economy, kickstarting a new paradigm. So that's definitely one real exciting part of the BIA building, and the BIA headquarters. And of course, there's like a ton of technology that comes from that, right? Like as already has been mentioned. But one thing that really excites me personally is this kind of interaction between traditional wisdoms and modern science and futuristic visions. So, and what particularly as can be reflected in the roof and the use of curvature, which we know is beneficial ecologically because curved things consume less material because they have more strength. But also socially, it allows for like both the benefits of open plan, or also the benefits of closed plan office spaces. So where you want like smaller groups to congregate, you have smaller spaces. They seamlessly, fluidly interact with larger spaces. And that's again a positive use of curvature in the service of the user. And similarly, we have used curvature on the roof to save material and also save on heating and cooling loads, because curvature has all these benefits. And I think that's, again, like nobody really thinks about it because everything is seamlessly integrated because of the kind of fluid collaboration between the various stakeholders.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jay. Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Haider. I think what we heard today is a testament to BIA's visionary sort of view and outlook on environment, and also on, their new headquarters is really an embodiment of all of this. It was a pleasure to moderate this panel. I was absolutely honored to be a part of this webinar. Hind, back to you.
Thank you, Nadeem. As we come to the end of this afternoon's webinar, it has been fascinating to learn more about the talented team behind the UAE Space Program and the innovations that will continue to drive our nation forward. As we gradually return to our ordinary lives and the workplace, it was extremely informative to hear from experts from Zaha Hadid Architects, Johnson Controls, and Evotech, and how architecture and technology will shape offices of the future. For highlights from today's event, do check out BIA's Instagram stories and posts at the handle BIAUAE. For everyone watching, it is a pleasure to host you today for our first virtual webinar. I hope you leave with new learnings, insights, and inspired about what our future has in store for us. Thank you and stay safe.